Ladies and gentlemen, let me introduce myself. I am Reza Ramadansyah and I will be the master of ceremony for the second session. We are opening today's second session with a big theme, navigating payment system to unlock the potential of digital economy in the era of continuous disruption, FinTech 360 degrees. Less is more, the LT-based solution for efficient trade finance, which will be moderated by the Deputy Director of Payment System Policy Department Bank Indonesia, Bapak Ricky Satria. Please welcome Bapak Ricky Satria.
Okay, thank you, Reza. Ladies and gentlemen, and dear colleagues and friends, welcome to the session of Less is More, the LT-based solution for efficient trade finance. As may you know, trade finance is the set of tools that banks and other financial institutions use to extend credit and other forms of lending to individuals and business so that they may engage in the international exchange of goods and services. However, the industry is still relying on paper documents and manual labor that lead to shipping and payment delays, as well as high transaction costs. Due to such inefficiencies, access to trade finance has never been easy for small business that lack the resource to comply with the requirements laid out by parties involved in the trade finance. DLT, or some say blockchains, is phenomenal platform in the last decade, especially after cryptocurrency emerged. However, we will not talk about cryptocurrency today, but the platform itself that can be used to any use case beside the cryptocurrency. And one of that to facilitate and modernize trade finance, especially for export and import. Many experts believe, including me, it can address those pain points and inefficiency. It will allow instantaneous exchange of trade, related documents, and provide verifiable identities for all parties involved to a transaction, thus enhancing safety and regulatory compliance. Blockchain revitalize the process of trade finance will allow SMEs in developing markets to engage in international trade on a much larger scale, yielding higher income for their economies and the world. Is it right or not true? We are lucky to answer the question. In this session, we had experts from three sides to answer and explore it. First, regulator view from Indonesian FSA OJK, Mr. Devri Andri, Head of Bank Supervision Department 2. He is also Indonesia's representative for the Basel Committee's Supervision and Implementation Group. Second, from independent organization view, World Economic Forum, Mrs. Yan Xiao, project lead of digital trade team. Mrs. Yan has extensive private sector experience in financial services, e-commerce, cross-border investment, and capital markets. Last but not least, from implementer view, which is bank, we had two experts here will share to us. First, Mr. Jean Christophe Manghar, OGC, Senior Growth and Innovation Manager, HSBC. He has more than 12 years experience working in trade and commodity finance in major financial institutions and has been focusing on innovation for the past 4 years, leading initiative in commodity, sustainability, and trade finance. And also, Mrs. Kun Pintuan Clayson, Head of Trade Finance Product Management, Bangkok Bank. She has hands-on experience in global product management, development, and implementation across a variety of transaction banking products, including trade and supply chain finance, cash management, transaction banking forex, and risk management for both corporates and financial institutions. So without delay, let's start. First to Mr. Devri. Our question is that technological development should respond by the regulator in the positive way. We should nurturing innovation that benefit consumer, economy, and nation. But in the other hand, we should mitigating the risk arise. Seeing that matter, Mr. Devri, would you please elaborate to us how OJK views on the technological development to support the financial industry in the future, especially blockchain in the trade finance? DLT platform may expand the opportunities of expanding global supply chain and promising efficiency, while at the same time, we also should build our national capacity. What do you think? I hand on the time and space to you for 10 to 15 minutes, please.
Thank you, Pak Ricky. Thank you very much, everybody. Good afternoon, good evening to other speakers, probably Pak JC, Yan, and Pintuan. Thank you for coming, attending this meeting as well. So before I deliver a little bit, 3, 4, 5, 6 slides with regards to the issue that we are going to discuss today, I would like to go over the issues that Pak Ricky just mentioned to me. So for me, that from an IT perspective, there should be no issue with regards to the blockchain or DLT implementations, providing banks comply with the existing OJK or BI regulations on IT risk management, digital banking, and other regulations related to digital financial innovations. OJK has received actually several applications for DLT or this distributed ledgers technology-based trade financing in this regard. So this is in accordance to OJK strategic plan, wherein we encourage banks to use the digital transformations to enhance the bank's business, but they also have to consider the risk management and control is adequate and in accordance with our regulations as well. And to address your second question, can agree more. We agree wholeheartedly. The industry, both financial and non-financial, as well as regulators and supervisors, should also acquire substantial technological know-how and the willingness to adjust our operational approach in order to implement this technology. So please, I have a slide. Okay, so first, the second slide. Here, I would like to, so we can say that the Indonesia's GDP has contracted, as we are aware, by 4.2% in the third quarter of 2020, and is expected to contract as much as 1.5%. And we still hope that it's going to be much less than that by the end of 2020, which is still considerably better than in countries such as other countries, including the ASEAN 5 countries, as well as the whole of Europe and Asia. Indonesia's trade balance surplus is considered a sign of recovering economic conditions ahead, even during these times where there are plenty of signs of an upcoming recessions. We are in the recession period already, but of course, in the other side, we can say that the positive trade balance is because of the decreasing, the significant decreasing in the import side. However, we are still looking at these numbers as like, like a positive thing for us, especially for the trade finance activities in the future. Nonetheless, our other banking indicators are also shown to be stable during these times, even though there are maybe a slight decline in profitability because of the increase of the credit risk. Every jurisdiction has the same problem right now about the increase in the credit risk, but we are still have like an ample liquidity and a solid capital base. With the implementation of the stimulus, capital and liquidity is shown to increase or ample. On the other hand, as expected, due to deferred loan repayments, NPL ratio tends to increase, as I mentioned before, about the increase of the credit risk. And we pay special attention to the allocations of impairment losses or provisionings and the net NPL ratios as well. So that's our macro indicators with regards to the bank. Next slide, slide number 3. On the next slide, we can see in the era of modern banking, trade finance is a part of the transaction banking strategy, which provides banking solutions by optimizing customers' cash cycle. You can see about the trade finance, among others, activities such as cash management, remittances, treasury activities. All of them are providing the banks with the opportunity to diversify their income from interest-based income to fee-based income, or FPI. Various combinations of service types were developed with the aim of deepening client relationship, as well as way for banks to mitigate risks that may rise optimally. Next slide, slide number 4. Here we see about, this is the basic one, about the different payment method, different risk level, and different bank solutions with regards to the trade finance. That's the difference in the choice of payment method will provide different risk levels as seen from both the buyers and the sellers perspective, and those requiring different solutions. And from this figure, we also see that the letter of credit or documentary credit is still seen as having a moderate level of risk for both sides of the trading contract, because it requires a third party to be present. It's a bank. And LC is most appropriate when one of the parties is not well known and the receiving party would like to the bank present to ensure payment or delivery. On the other hand, an open account is a transaction where the exporter ships the goods first and receives the payment once the importers have received the goods. The open account works when the importer has sufficient credit information to assume the risk of delivery. For the open account, the importer is responsible for meeting the payment obligation without any warranty documents. Open account has grown in the last years because some exporters are willing to take the risk to increase export volume. In fact, when I'm doing my job as a supervisor, calling back like 10, 15 years ago, when the advance payment and open account started known by the industries, we had like, sometimes I had like a skeptical impressions about the rise that kind of device or tools. In fact, some of my skeptical is true because letter of credit is still alive now. So more documentations, legal and or administrative for both open account and documentary credit products. Like Pak Ricky just mentioned, that there are abundant, huge, so much paperwork that have to deal with these kinds of transactions actually. And what's next that we are going to have? This is, I try to make, this is like, I'm not creating this figure alone. I took it sometimes, something from one of the book. I forgot the name of the book. I should have mentioned it here. That the business processes of trade financing are quite complex since they involve many contracting parties and a series of actions that has to be carried out in sequence. Nevertheless, they also hint the possibilities or potentials of moving towards a distributed ledger scheme on the right hand. Traditional trade financing involves at least 6 parties directly, of which there may be other parties that are directly as well as indirectly involved in the trade finance business process, such as insurance, dependent surveyors, and freight forwarders. Can you imagine in the left that what we are doing most of the time right now, there are so many paperwork, or so many emails, communications. Sometimes there is no guarantee that all of the parties are having the same transaction recording system, not to mention about the, the typo, the something that will create another operational risk in the future. However, the DLT, that one that we are discussing right now, distributed ledgers technology, is able to streamline the, we hoping, right, is able to streamline the trade finance process through the use of blockchains, where each participant on the network can securely amend the ledger, which will be updated simultaneously to reflect the most recent actions and made available for all members to view and all on the network at the same time. That's decentralizations. That's a key word now. The fundamental requirement for pre-implementations of the utilizations of DLT is document electronifications and taking the necessary steps to ensure the validity of digital signatures in their documentations. So I hope other speakers will talk about that later, about the what are the challenges that we are facing to deal with the electronifications and also to make sure about the proper documents are presented well, such as the commercial documents, transport documents, and other legal documents. Next slide. In the slide number 6, we can see about the future shapes by blockchain leverage trade finance, that there are many advantages to be gained from the implementations of blockchain in trade financing for all parties involved, government authorities included. The first one is the certainty. Trade shipment and trade documents such as the bill of lading are tokenized on the blockchain to provide delivery assurance to the buyer. This dramatically streamlines trade finance processes, thereby increasing the transaction speed, like Ricky has introduced that kind of thing before. And the second one, with the real-time automation, since all commercial actions are immediately relayed on the blockchain, payment is also automated and its process expedited due to the nature of smart contracts, with which guarantees payment to be delivered should all conditions are met, if all conditions are met. And efficiency is also improved, the speed up of the transaction settlement time, the streamlined process, including reduced paperwork, since there is no longer a need for multiple copies of the same documents of information stored on numerous databases across various entities, significantly reduces human error, like I mentioned, since the data is conciled immediately. Furthermore, capital that may otherwise be tied up due to the delayed timeline of traditional trade financing may be otherwise allocated to more productive use. I never agree with the say about the reducing of the manpower immediately. It's not going to happen immediately. Transparency also may be the biggest and most important factor, since each transaction is recorded sequentially and indefinitely. All parties involved should then possess the same correct copies, like the blockchain. That's the advantages of that kind of technology, the platform, I mean. This provides the audit trail for the life of the trade assets will be implemented, as well as a better verification of assets authenticity and reductions of compliance costs. For supervisors like such as us in OJK, this provides us with a real-time view of all the essential documents, especially with regards to the audits on MLCTF as well. And moreover, I'm going to say issues and challenges for a successful DLT-based trade financing in Indonesia. Of course, to make this work in Indonesia, we have to be able to strike the balance between the value creations that is coming from these activities to the risks that we are facing with regards to these activities as well. Firstly, we would need a legal and regulatory framework to be imposed and implemented in Indonesia. The framework, first and foremost, should strive to provide a level playing field for large and small firms alike. Receive support from the legal system and other supporting institutions, make revisions on laws concerning and related to ownership where needed, as well as provide acquisites for data validity and credibility conditions, and discerns what informations are required for supervisory purposes and the level of supervisory access to informations. First and foremost, the fundamental requirement for implementing the LT is encouraging Indonesian companies to carry out document electronifications and take the necessary steps to ensure the validity of digital signatures in their documentations. And however, legal impact is the most concerning issue in this regard. While there is a wide consensus among the cryptographics and IT community regarding the practical immutability of block in a well-defined blockchain. I mean, nobody can change that. Nobody can modify that. There is as yet no legal recognition of this aspect of blockchains, and therefore it could not be used as a legal argument in court. So probably many people here not agree with my point of view here, but as a supervisor, of course, I'm going to say this clearly. right now. And then secondly, we would also require a global consensus and cross-country collaborations, a global agreement worldwide between all the concerned actors, that is the sellers, buyers, banks, inspections companies, customs authorities, shipping companies, insurance companies, etc. Is indispensable in the implementation of the blockchain, all of them. So particularly with regards to issues of territoriality and jurisdiction, definition of negotiable instruments in partner country, as well as adoption of smart contracts in partner country. Smart contracts is also another issue in this regards. And then the third one is the lack of standardizations and data quality. We need in international trade, the complexity of a contract and those of a transaction is driven by the terms and conditions of such contract, which can significantly differ from one to another. Standardizations of data and file formats, data exchange, security protocols, integrations with old legacy systems should be sorted out and preferable at an international level. And then the interoperability, everybody knows the challenge is so much here. I mean, it's not really easy to operate this at the first time, but after that, it's going to ease everybody whenever there is a successful in the first implementation, of course. Then the governance framework, DLT that is likely to be applied to financial services would be permission-based in contrast to a permission-less system like Bitcoin due to efficiency, security, and privacy reasons. Then the reversibility and ownership. With regards to reversibility, we have to accept that by adopting the DLT transaction cannot be modified, canceled, or revoked to handle mistakes. Then we also have to pay attention to the privacy management. It should be, the DLTs could be used to store and share private information on clients, e.g. for KYC procedures purposes. And lastly, government authorities as catalyst or agent of change. That's on my side lecture. Next slide. Of course, I will say that this is our tools to assess our bank's rating, our bank soundness. So, an answer to your introduction questions, Pak Ricky, that OJK has received several applications for DLT-based trade financing. This is in accordance to OJK's strategic plan, wherein we encourage. So, despite all of the challenges that I've mentioned before, I didn't mean to discourage everybody to go on. So, we have a strategic plan wherein we encourage banks to use digital technology to boost efficiency, considering the bank's risk management and control is adequate and in accordance with the OJK or BI regulations. From an IT perspective, there should be no issue with regards to blockchain implementations. Here we have the tools actually to see how the banks use or utilize their technology, especially in the operational risk side on the the right-hand side. And here, I should read again about our risk-based supervision cycle, that we have to understanding the bank first. The second one, we assess the bank soundness. The third one, we plan the supervisory activities. On the fourth one, we do the risk-based on-site examinations. Then before we updating the bank's rating and other supervisory actions and monitoring that we need. We also have on the number one, understanding of the bank. Of course, we are going to see about how the systems regarding trade finance in this regards works in bank. And when we are assessing the bank's rating, we can see about the four parameters or four indicators I mentioned: the risk profile. In risk profile, we see the inherent risk management before we come up with the net risk of the banks, and the good corporate governance implementations, the earnings, and the capital. With regards to the trade financing and the DLT utilization in this regard, matters, probably the risks associated with those activities are like, of course, the credit risk, but most of the time it's the operational risk and, of course, the legal risk. That's the most important thing that is coming from our side as a supervisor. This is like an illustration to DLT based data finance, that trade finance, I mean, that compliance automatically monitored by reading the market's ledgers. Supervisors would have access to the verified data, but only the information required for supervisory purposes. And supervisors should also adopt blockchain technology to supervise blockchain-enabled transaction. I don't know whether we are going to be able to cope with this. I mean, we are also in the development of our subtech. Everybody does that around the world, all the jurisdictions, I believe. We are also the members of the G20 as well as the BCBS. So we are going to have that same, path also. And in order to do so, banks and supervisors alike would need to acquire as well as develop human capital that are well versed in DLT and trade finance. So that's, I think, the things I would like to say, that probably if a bank would like to implement the blockchain or DLT technology with regards to the trade finance activities, there will be a big jump probably from the email, paper-based, abundant email or fax email. I don't know whether they are still using that, to the blockchain and decentralizations. Documents that currently are still sent through the DHL, that sometimes we are still really not sure 100%. There were cases about the security, auditability, and efficiency. That's from our side. So once again, that striking the balance between the value creation from these matters to the risk that the banks and customers face with these activities are in our concerns. Thank you, Pak Ricky.
Yeah, thank you, Jeffrey. That is very clear from Mr. Jeffrey. OJK encourage banks to leverage their technology to the modern bank. One of them, implementation of DLT gradually. Benefit is there not only for banks, but also for all participants involved. However, there are some challenges and risks such as credit, operational, and legal risks need to be addressed to get the benefit. Now let's move to the second expert, Mr. Yan from WEF. We know that WEF published toolkit about facilitating trade with blockchain technology. Would you please identify the key success factors which can drive the transformation in the trade finance ecosystem? Would you share experience involving in the several projects in various countries? Time and space for you, Mrs. Yan.
Hi, everyone. First, thank you very much for Ricky's introduction. And it's my great honor to be here. And very nice to meet you all, the fellow panelists, and also the audience. So I'm currently based in San Francisco, and the World Economic Forum has opened up a Center for Fourth Industrial Revolution in San Francisco in 2017. And our goal is really to try to bridge the gap between the late technology and the policies. So I would like to ask to launch the slides, and I'm happy to go over some projects we have done in the past and also lessons learned. Can I go to the next slide? So as we all know, the trade financing is a very important issue. The estimate today is that the annual trade transactions are actually at 15 trillion and is going to grow to 25 trillion by 2027. And 80% of the global trade transaction actually relying on trade financing. So when I was a law student in Michigan, one of the most difficult class is actually about trade financing and the issues about letter of credits and the bill of lading. So that's the only class in law school that failed many law students. In real life, when we think about trade financing, the company Maersk actually has done research as to how long it's going to take for the Kenya to export the avocado to the Netherlands. And at the end, it would take 34 days involving 30 actors, 100 members, and also there are more than 200 interactions. And surprisingly, 1/3 of the time is actually for the documents to be processed. Based on our survey, the processing the trade transactions actually on average could include an exchange of 36 documents and 240 copies. The main reason why there's such a complex process is really because of lack of trust between the importers and exporters. And given that the transactions often happen across the borders, and they are very limited information on each other to allow them to understand the business. Next slide, please. So Mr. Andrew has already gone through a lot of pain points of the process. And there are a few things I want to highlight in terms of the miscommunications involved in the discussion among multiple parties, and also lack of the transparency. And other than resulting in the delay of the payments, there's also possibilities of the damage to perishable goods while they were waiting for the documents to be processed. And in addition, because lack of transparency, and there are possibilities that the same cargo are used to secure multiple financings through the bill of lading. And also at the same time, the same letter of credits are being factored multiple times, which can create potential financial risks. Next slide, please. So in terms of the benefit of blockchain, Mr. Andrew has already given a very comprehensive discussion. So one thing I kind of want to emphasize is about the disintermediation. What it means is that traditionally between the import bank and export bank, you may have multiple corresponding banks to help with the foreign exchange. But with the blockchain technology and also digital payments, it is possible that the import bank and the export bank can talk to each other directly and cutting down the time involved among the corresponding banks in terms of the document reviews, AML, and also foreign exchange time. And also the transparency factor can really help reduce the fraud involved with the letter of credit and also bill of lading. Next slide, please. So there's one thing I want to highlight, that blockchain hasn't addressed all the issues with respect to trade financing. So before the trade financing process actually gets started, we have been experiencing a very high rejection rates. Based on a survey conducted by Asia Development Bank in 2019, they estimated a 1.5 trillion gap in the current global trade finance demand. So on average, there's a 40% rejection rate. And most of the rejection rates comes from the SMEs. So even though the SMEs, they constitute 37% of the trade finance demand, however, they, in terms of the rejection rate, is actually very high. It amounts to 45%. And in particular, with respect to the women-owned firms, their rejection rate is much higher compared with the male-owned firms. And also, after rejection, it's less likely for women-owned firms to obtain financing with male-owned firms. Overall, what happened is that it resulted in the reduction in the overall trade flows. About 60% of the companies who were rejected were not able to complete the trade. And in terms of the reason of rejection, from a macro level, based on the surveys conducted by ADB, most of the banks will actually reject based on the country of origin. And a lot of times that for countries with low credit rating, the banks would typically do not want to provide financing. But however, there's actually a gap between the country credit rating and the default rate of trade transactions. And from a lot of developing countries, even though the country may have low credit rating, but the default rate of the trade transactions are actually very low. And from the micro perspective, from the bank's response, a lot of banks are talking about the cost involved with the AML and KYCs, and also the concern about the compliance with those requirements and rules. I think that's some area which can be addressed through the artificial intelligence and also big data. And then the second thing is about from the SME's perspective. A lot of times that they were rejected because they were unable to provide the collaterals that's asked by banks. Next slide, please. So when we think about the whole trade financing in terms of answering the questions posed by Ricky, what are the key success factors in terms of improving the efficiency of trade finance, and how can we unleash the full potentials for the blockchain? I want to talk about 5 areas. And the first one is about digitization of trade. And as Mr. Andre has mentioned, it's very important to make sure that the parties will use e-signature and also use e-invoicing. At present, when people talk about electronic documents, people often refer to as the PDF copy of the document. But however, in order for trade digitization, we need to go one step further. And also blockchain technology, they won't be able to stand alone by itself. They require the adoption of other technology to support the process. And one of the most important technology is actually text recognition to allow the documents to be transferred into a complete data format instead of just staying as a PDF. And the second one is about the IoTs. The blockchain actually requires IoTs to be in place to help the information about the shipment to be transferred into the blockchain system. And then the last one is about artificial intelligence and big data, which will allow the banks to process large amounts of AML and KYC checks. And right now, the banks are facing a lot of pressures because of the more and more e-commerce platforms are actually generating more and more transactions, which places stress on the bank's ability to process AML and KYC. And artificial intelligence in big data is definitely going to help with the process. And the last one is about the data flow. It's very important for the data to be able to be shared across borders without the restrictions. And it's also very important given that the governments are typically the entities that hold a lot of important data, in particular with respect to the certificates of origins, and also with respect to the license related to import and export. So it's important to make sure that the data sharing can be conducted on the governments directly. And another thing is to make sure that the data will actually be able to be used for future transactions going forward. Next slide, please. And the second thing is really about the innovation. It's very important to have the basic infrastructures in place, including the access to the internet and the electricities. And the second thing is that in order to promote innovation, the best way is actually for the government to champion the adoption of innovation. We have published a paper on the adoption of electronic single windows. At present, actually, there are only less than 1/3 of the countries in the world that have established the electronic single windows. And the government of Indonesia actually do have electronic single window in place. I think that's a great way to kickstart the adoption of blockchain. And then the third thing is that based on some survey conducted by WTO, a lot of companies has reflected that one of the challenges of adopting the latest technology is really about the cost associated with upgrading their system. So it's important for the government to provide financial incentives such as tax breaks to help the companies to upgrade their systems. And then finally is really about the policies to promote competition, to make sure that the technologies will continue to surface, to continue to improve the trade process. Next slide, please. And the third important success factor is with respect to the modernization of the laws and regulations, as mentioned by Mr. Andre. So legal challenges has actually been cited as one of the most pressing challenges by the blockchain companies involved in improving the trade process. In order to unleash the benefits of blockchains, we need to make sure that the governments will recognize and also accept the e-signatures, the smart contracts, and e-documents. The trade process will only be digitized if all the governments can actually allow the adoption of the smart contract for the process from the legal perspective. And the last thing I want to emphasize from the legal perspective is with respect to potential conflicts between the blockchain system and the current laws and regulations. For example, the blockchain operations is immutable. You won't be able to change it once it takes place. But at the same time, the contract can be deemed as void based on the court judgments. So how can we reconcile the inconsistencies of the title caused by the conflict between blockchain technology and the law is something that for the regulators to think through. Next slide, please. And in order for blockchain to work, it's very important to ensure about the system integration and interoperability. Given that we are talking about international trade, the blockchain technology can only work if they are interoperable among different platforms. And also it's important for the blockchain to be interoperable with other tech advancements such as AI and IoT. And the last thing is very important for the blockchain technology to be interoperable with the existing systems that's already adopted at the customs and at various government agencies. Next slide, please. And the last aspect of the key success factors I would like to emphasize it's about global harmonization. And it's very important to adopt the digital standards and protocols for trade and identification as well. So one thing I want to emphasize is that the reason why a lot of documentations takes a long time to process is because there's the lack of identification at the global level. So having a legal entity identifier at the global level being adopted by the corporations can really help to drive and reduce the process. And one thing I want to emphasize is on the recently signed Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership. They actually place a lot of emphasis in adoption of paperless trade. And in the chapter on the e-commerce, the partnership agreement actually mentioned about the importance of harmonization. And they recommended adopting the methods already agreed by the international organizations. And for example, the United Nations Commission of the International Trade Law, they actually have published a set of model laws with respect to the e-signatures, electronic transaction, and also the cross-border transmission of electronic communications. So it's very important for countries to adopt those model laws in order to drive the consensus. And the last thing, given that the technology are improving day by day, so it's very important to have the public and private collaborations with the between the government and the private sectors to understand where the technology stands and where the gaps are in terms of the policy. Next slide, please. At the World Economic Forum here, we are trying to improve the state of the world through the public and private collaborations. The way we conduct it is really through building communities at the national, regional, and also global levels. And we leverage the communities to co-design the projects and generate insights on the challenges and recommendations. And we also leverage the community and our events to amplify the message in order to drive the impact in the real world. Next slide. So I would like to call your attention to the publications we have done in the past, focusing on how to leverage blockchain in the process of single trade window and also trade financing, and also our publications on promoting e-payments. And we are having a latest report on Trade Tech, which is a survey based on the latest technologies. And also we are going to show the interplays between those technologies and the policy implications. And the forum here, we are also participating in E-Trade for All in terms of promoting the e-commerce globally. And in terms of the countries where we are involved, Just to give a few examples, we are working with the government of Brazil to modernize the licensing procedures for food. And we are also working with the government of Colombia to establish the Center for Trade Facilitation and Good Practice. And we are also working with the government of Morocco to develop electronic phyto certificates for food and agriculture goods. So there's still quite a lot to be done, and we welcome you to join our initiatives to help to improve the state of the world. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Xiao. That's really clear that from Mr. Xiao that there are 5 important factors should be in place, which are trade digitization, that's including innovation, modern law and regulation, system integration and interoperability, global harmonization, and not to mention collaboration among parties, including private. That's good. WF already shared what the factors should be in place. However, we are far to reach the perfection. Now, let's listen from the practitioner, the bank itself. In the limitation, how do they innovate, use the blockchain to facilitate the modern trade finance? I invite Mr. Manghar. We know that HSBC has modernized its trading platform using blockchain and joined several trade finance consortium. Would you share the benefit of implementing the platforms, the key success factor and challenge? And time and space is yours, GC.
Hi, thanks, Ricky, and thanks all for organizing this and giving the opportunity to talk on this topic that is very important for HSBC. I mean, as one of the largest, or maybe the largest, trade finance institution, we are really seeing like the development of trade and the facilitation of trade as something key that we really should foster and support. I think both the previous participants have really given a very good overview and have covered a lot of things that actually I wanted to cover. So I think I will be quite short in this presentation, just to go on really on the key aspect. So I don't know if you want to show the slides. Yeah, well, anyway, it's a bit small to read. Anyway, so for HSBC, we have started working already more than 4 years ago about how we can use DLT to digitalize trades. And the digitalization of trade has been started a very long time ago, but it really didn't scale because every institution were doing their own digitalization project. You have some a bit bigger scale one, but you always had this problem of having one party owning all the data and having this central point of failure, this central risk. So that's where, I mean, the DLT blockchain came in to solve this. By building on a decentralized basis with the industry together, those applications that could make the entire process digital instead of having to rely on paper to connect those, I would say, digital island or startup digital islands. So the advantages that we have experienced, I mean, of course, being able to digitalize the paper process can reduce a transaction that was before taking like 2-3 weeks in just a matter of day. The visibility also in the various platforms that that I will just quickly mention after, the visibility that all the parties have is also very important because everybody can know the status of the transaction at every single point. Without having to rely on person-to-person communications. Overall, we also think that trade finance tools have been reducing in adoptions, but mainly because they are very tedious. It's very complex. But we really see that there is still a big demand for this from the big corporates because they are saying that they are taking too much on their balance sheets, but because they don't want to use those tools that are too complex. But especially, and as was mentioned before, for the smaller and especially in the developing country where they may not have like the risk rating to do trade on open account, there is really this need to use those trade finance tools, but use it in a way that is efficient. You can go to the next slide. So just quickly on what we have been doing. So we have been doing mainly we've had three different approach. The first one is on to building global industry utility, because I mean, we know the problems that our clients and the industry has. So the idea is to go together with our peer, with our competitor, to try to make those process better, faster, and cheaper. Some of the example that you may have heard, like Contour or Without Trade, are typical example of this really industry coming together to solve the problem using DLT-based platform. We are also working on more what I would say ancillary platform, because I mean, as you know, trade is a very complex process with a lot of different parties. So working on, for example, the digitalization of the shipping documents, digitalization of the track and trace around the supply chain, all those parts are really important within the broader trade and have an impact on trade finance. And then the last one is on working more in country, often with regulator. I mean, here, I would say that there is a great potential for adoption, because lots of the legal issues that you can have internationally are less stringent in the local setup. And especially sometimes those products are very specific in the local setup. So that really makes sense. Now, this being said, we also have to be careful of doing it when it really makes sense inside the country, in order to prevent having more digital island, I would say. And that brings me then to my challenge part of it, which is, again, this digital island, ensuring that those platforms can communicate together. I think this is still in infancy, but the need is not really there at the moment, because those platforms are still developing. But this will be very important going forward. There is some legal challenges, especially around standardization, but it's mainly also a tech issue, in the sense that it's easy currently to take data from one platform and put it into the other, but keeping what make blockchain specific, like the trust element and the prevention on double spend, this is still something that is evolving. But I mean, this is going fast. And then I will not go too much into the legal and the standardization challenge that my two previous panelists have been quite in depth, but I just want to say that currently, I mean, there is a way to go to make it legally enforceable using other side legal documents, and that's what we are mainly relying on, and it's satisfying, but still being able to have a direct enforcement with the recognition in the various legislation of the e-signature or e-document of title that was mentioned before. This will really enable the faster growth of those platforms. Then there is also on the standardization aspect, and this is something also we are quite involved in lots of different international forums to basically have some more standard that are lacking in trade. But basically, just to conclude, I think that all those challenges, there is a lot of development, and especially since COVID, this has really accelerated, and so I'm quite confident that this will go in the right direction, and those platforms will be able to scale. Thanks a lot for your time. Ricky, back to you.
Thank you, GC. Even there are so many challenges, but the way that SBC work is really good. Working with the international organization, try to influence them, if my guess, and also with the local. That small start that will be challenge for local and international. Now let's move to Kun Pintuan, whether the same experience with the GC in the Bangkok Bank after upgraded the trading platform using the blockchain. We would like to hear from you the benefit of implementation the platform, key success factor, and challenge. Time and space for you, Kun Pintuan.
Thank you very much for having me. I'm Pintuan Klaisen from Bangkok Bank. I'm talking to you here from Bangkok, Thailand. Could you please share the first slide? Yes, the next. Yes, before I discuss about blockchain, I just want to give an overview of Bangkok Bank first. Bangkok Bank is a leading bank in Thailand and Southeast Asia. We established in 1944. And since then, we have built a depth and loyal customer base in 32 locations globally, and especially in Southeast Asia. And in some countries, we operate more than 60 years. For Indonesia, we operate there more than 50 years, to be precise, 52 years. And just recently, we just acquired Permata Indonesia, which is the 12th largest bank in total asset in Indonesia. Hopefully, with Permata, we can expand our business in Indonesia. We focus on our customer sectors, and we provide high quality financial service across the consumer business and international banking. And we have been recognized as being the best in banking providers in our business units. Next slide, please. We just want to touch base on our partner. Innovation is an integral part of our strategy, and it's also supported by the top management. Our team have space to develop and come up with the best solution. And our senior management has made a strategic decision 3 years ago to join R3 and give us the arena to work with global bank, for example, HSBC, and other leaders in the blockchain technologies area. R3 was founded 4 or 5 years ago. At that time, blockchain is new to financial service. So instead of each banks, each company do their own thing, so we get together and found R3, and then we share our resource to develop a different solution of DLT. And through R3, HSBC and Bangkok Bank also co-developed a solution called Contour, which focus on the DLT and try to address the trade finance solution. Next, please. Yeah, you heard 3 previous panelists talk about the issues of trade finance. Basically, it's about the need for trust and transparency, and also the complexity of ecosystem. And we have a lot of parties involved in end-to-end trade finance. At this moment, paper is still the only trusted media that each party has to produce, reconcile, and send to all parties around the world. We hope that DLT is going to address the trade finance issues. We start with the small steps, and hopefully through over the years, we're going to increase the efficiency of DLT on the trade finance. What DLT provides is the consensus that obtained across the network. Once the transaction was created by one party, and with the technology of smart contract that built by for example, application like Contour, and also the nature of DLT, it will get consensus by different parties in the network. And the data is synchronized real time on the network to all parties. And all the data is encrypted before it's recorded. So with all of this nature of DLT, we hope that DLT will bring us an opportunity to redefine the value of the trade finance. With this DLT features, it will help our corporate client to enhance risk mitigation because, as I said earlier, the transaction was consensus across the network. The data was synchronized to all parties at all time, and it's also encrypted. So the risk that and trust that really need in trade finance has been addressed. And then because of the real-time information sharing, the working capital is not locked at certain places, at certain party. Each party can have access to the working capital all the time. And hopefully, with all of this efficiency, will lower the cost of transaction and can connect more people. I think all of this, my previous panelists already touched on the speed, convenience, and service levels. And actually, after I heard Delphi from OJK, for me as the banker, when I look at the regulator, also talking about our same concern and see solutions with similar point of view of banker, I'm very comfortable that we are going to have a great future with DLT in Indonesia. Next slide, please. I just want to show you the use cases that we have conducted in Indonesia. The solution is called Contour. We already apply DLT solution on trade finance. We start Contour as a project with R3 and other member banks, for example, HSBC. And JC and I worked together for a few years on Contour. And just recently, early this year, we set up the company that we founded together. There are 8 banks, as you see here. Besides Bangkok Bank and HSBC, there are also major bank in trade finance get together because we really believe in what we did, what we do. And since then, we grow our network, as you can see here. At the same time, we also have the leader of the trade finance in the ecosystem, for example, Borero, SDoc, and a few others join the network as well. The vision of Contour is to apply DLT on trade finance. In January last year, we conducted the first transaction between Thailand and Indonesia. It's just a test transaction using Contour on the DLT platform, and it was very successful. Our customer is very happy that the lead time went down from end to end 10 days. When the customer opened the LC, get the LC advice, normally it will take about 2 days, but this part, it went down from 2 days to just 1 hour. And after the shipment took place, the negotiation period also take only about 3 hours instead of 4 or 5 days, including the document preparation, presentation, and courier and tracking. So after that, we have done a lot of tests, a lot of trial. And this year, we just did another test transaction, but now on the beta environment, which is the pre-production of Contour between Thailand and Vietnam. It went very well, and the customer is very happy with the result. And hopefully, we're going to grow the network after this. Next slide, please. I just want to emphasize on the benefit of blockchain. As the other 3 panelists just mentioned, the blockchain will increase the transparency, which is the biggest pain of trade finance. All the parties involved will get the real-time information, and they know that what they see is what they're going to get. And it's reduced. The next one is to reduce the paperwork tremendously, because according to EUCP, some paper are allowed to present already digitally on the system. So Contour and on DLT already utilize these features. And also the time reduction. As I said earlier, it went down from 10 days to 2 half day or 24 hours. So all of this lead to our customer satisfaction, which is the center of our business. So when they transact with LC, with their international trade partner, especially when we see the case in Asia, for example, the shipment from Thailand to Indonesia, if the customer ship the goods, for example, on Friday, the goods arrive already on Sunday, but then on Monday morning, our exporters starting collect the documents and present to the bank on Tuesday, but the goods already wait in the warehouse since Sunday. So this is a clear example of how successful that DLT can apply to trade finance, and it's going to increase the customer satisfaction. Okay, next key success factor. Next slide, please. I just want to keep it simple. I think you heard from a lot of people from RJK and from JC and also from WEF already, all the success factors. I just want to focus on the 3 baby steps, the 3 simple things. First, trade finance, you cannot do it alone. You have to have the network, at least the people that you conduct the business with. Issuing bank, advising bank, importer and importers has to be on the same network. So you have to form the network that all the parties can participate. And when you have a network, you have to agree on the same term and governance. And then you have to continue to grow the network. So you have to try to decrease the entry barrier. When we start talking to our customers, they would like to have it. Some customers don't want to know the details, what is DLT, but they just want to know, okay, what if they want to do transaction with DLT, what do they need to have without any buzzwords or anything. They just want to make sure that they can apply on their business. So all of this, we have to make sure that it's happened, and then we can build all the complexity further to increase the network, increase our ecosystem. That is all from me.
Okay. Thank you, Khun Pintuan. Thank you very much. It is clear for me and also for the participant, the benefit of the blockchain, as the previous panels inform us. Transparency and efficiency is there. Does imply bank assist customer, our economy, of course the bank itself in the future, to become modern bank as the Mr. Devri informed us. The approach by using the R3 core data is really advanced movement by Bangkok Bank, and also test it in between Indonesia and Thailand. Well, the key success factor that you said that let creating the working group and network involve many parties beside the one to accelerate the implementation, and then apply rule of the game for the governance. This we can reduce the entry barrier to test it. I think the design thinking approach could be applied on this situation. So the prototyping and the pilot will be input for all the parties to upgrade their understanding, including the guidance, regulation, and others. That's probably during the COVID as the major influence for the innovation. After this one, we can implement it to assist our SME and our economy, especially for the emerging market. Now let's dig down the explanation and talk to fill our curiosity. Some question coming from the participant we can ask to you. For example, from Mr. Anang from BNI saying that what's the suggestion from you, a project that banks should start? Because this is new things, involve cost, people, resource, and also uncertainty. All of you can answer this question, please. Starting from Devri, probably.
With regard to these questions, actually, I'm not gonna answer it through the technical ones, but I'm going to say that I don't know whether we are going to start with the gradual process, because like I mentioned before, that for me, this is like a big jump from, for the trade finance activities, from like a very abundant paperwork based, much email, everything's still on the paper based, and then you go into the like the blockchain technology. So I don't know whether there is a system that enable you to make it like in a gradual process. As far as I'm concerned, that in many international fora for the supervisors or regulators, they also say that trade finance activities is like the least modernized activities that has been implemented throughout, compared to other activities with regards to the blah 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 4.0, something like that. So that's from my perspective. I don't know about the technical issues in this regards.
Okay, thank you, Jeffrey. I think that's good solution. Let's start from small, right? Because we see some good efficiency here. Panelists already informed us, at least in the documentation. Why we can try to reduce that the documentation in terms of export import, or we can test it probably in the local trade finance, SKBDN, to see it before moving further to export and import. That's a good start. So all of us involved on that one, we discuss it, see the opportunity, risk, and other to expand. Thank you, Mr. Devi. Let's move to the next question, to coming from Raditya Pratama, SSBC, also your people, GC. If banks are planning to have commercialization for the DC issuance through blockchain, seeking OJK BI view, whether would be possible to have it hosting it not cloud basis, or it should be on-premise onshore basis. What your suggestion, GC? Then probably Jeffrey or BI or me, I can answer it a little bit. For us, probably we will try to find the solution. If this is good for our country, creating the not possible, but we need to find out how to make it. Please, GC.
Yeah, no, I think that's actually one of the great advantages of this technology, in the sense that each of the party own its data, and so the fact that you have the control over your data, that you master. I mean, you are the only one with access to this data. It's really different also than others, SaaS solution where you will have one provider that will have access to everything, that will just, you will access to him. In this case, each of the party has access to its own data. So then the fact that it's on cloud and abroad or inside, I think that's a great mitigant. The fact that whoever, whichever entity you are, you have this control of his data. And so that's the big difference, I would say, with if you have like a solution on cloud that is like a SaaS software, or where all the data are mixed with everything else. In this case, it's different because you have the control. So I think that's a great a plus that this solution is bringing to basically make it more acceptable in a lot of countries, the fact that this is being hosted on cloud and often abroad. Maybe another point that I just want to raise on this is that there is, of course, cost implications depending on how do you host it. And so also in terms of adoption, the fact that you can have the flexibility and the cost efficiency of cloud, I think is quite important for adoption of this type of solution, but actually any type of solution.
Okay, thank you, GC. And also the question regarding the supervision. This is for Xiao and Pintuan and GC. How the regulators supervise the DLT-based trade finance in your jurisdiction or experience from Xiao doing the pilot during that time? Please, Pintuan. BOT, how they do it, supervision.
Oh, go ahead, sorry.
Okay. I'm talking about in both countries. Regulators would like to understand what are the risks and how do we mitigate all the risk. They have certain requirements, not just for DLT, but for IT project in general. And they would like to know how do we address all that and want to make sure that we protect our customer, we protect our own data. To work with regulators, in Thailand, we have a sandbox that under the close monitoring of Bank of Thailand. And for Indonesia, we work closely also with OJK. Since we conduct our first test transaction in Indonesia, our local branch already contact OJK. I believe our local branch mentioned Delphi that he worked closely with OJK, try to understand what are the requirements of OJK and make sure that we addressed all the information. As I understand, it's still quite open in Indonesia. There is no solid regulation yet, but we both need to understand the requirement, and we going to make sure that we comply with all the requirements of the regulators.
Okay, thank you. What about you, GC in HKMA? How they supervise the DLT this project?
Well, I mean, for us, I mean, we are in many different countries, and so we need in each of the country to ensure that this is tailoring to what the regulator see. On top of that, of course, there is the HKMA and in London, but yeah, I mean, we are basically following very strictly and whatever is part of the requirements, and so yeah, I cannot really say more than that. But one thing that I just want to say is that globally, in a lot of discussion, I think that there is really the regulator is very I would say open-minded, and not open-minded, but like really they really look at you know the benefit of it and try to understand and try to support, which is a very good way to align on developing those solutions that will bring a benefit to the entire ecosystem.
Okay, thank you, GC. What about you, Xiao? Any views on this issue? If you see in your experience, what the concept of the regulator on your pilot?
Yeah, sure. I think at the global level, a lot of the blockchain-enabled trade finance technology are actually, most of them are actually still at the piloting phase, and there's very limited global level rollouts. So in terms of the government's attitudes towards the blockchain-enabled trade financing, I think most of the governments are taking a very supportive approach. And one thing I want to highlight is actually about People's Bank of China. So they actually launched a blockchain trade finance platform, which previously is called the Bay Area Trade Finance Blockchain Platform. And it shows that how much they are their willingness to actually to support the blockchain-enabled trade finance at the global level. And I believe the recently signed the RCEP, the Regional Comprehensive Economy Partnership Agreement, has also reflected the many countries' willingness to push for the paperless trade in this area.
Okay, thank you, Xiao. I think
Pak Ricky, I would like to add the answer to Pak Raditya Pratama that was answered by JC this time, that if the bank can prove to us about the decentralization, and by that discussion we understand each other that the LT is decentralized, and then we can consider the LT based TF system as communication system like JC just mentioned between each parties, which is allowed to be hosted offshore actually, because that's decentralizations, right? So that's my understanding right now. But of course, when Pak Radit is going to do this and then seeking for our approval, something like that, and then we have to get a discussion first and proving about the the decentralizations kind of thing that happens. Once again, as long as all the risk mitigation required are in place, and then I think there is no other obstacles in doing this transaction or activities. And with regards to also the questions, that the first questions that I said that it's hard to be gradual, but I think I also agree with Pak Ricky also mentioned, we still can, like when I did the presentation, we can start from the, the electronifications, the digital signature authorization, something like that. But of course, for me, we have to think about the, the big change here, because we cannot say that's electronifications and then just done for some time. It's not going to work that way, I believe. But to answer that question promptly, I think the electronic documentations or digitalizations, and the second one, the signature authorization related kinds of things have to be solved first. And also for the Jean questions here, that's about, no, just those two questions. Thank you.
I also I want to quickly just supplement the discussion here is about the supervision. I think it's not just about the blockchain itself, and it's also about the data in terms of the data privacy and how the data will be treated, and also the supervision with respect to the cross-border data flow, given the data are actually on a distributed ledger and how the data will be managed. I think those are the areas actually the governments are very have a lot of emphasis on, as to understanding the flows of data. I think that's one of the top priorities in a lot of regulators' mind.
Okay, thank you, Xiao. It seems time is not our side, so I think we already reached our limit. But ladies and gentlemen, finally we come to the end of the presentation. We would like to say thanks again for all the presenters for their informative, interesting talk, and to audience for your active participation and question. Hopefully the presentation and discussion will be beneficial for everybody. Thank you for your attention. And I would like to close with a question. Don't be afraid to fail, be afraid not to try. And you never fail until you stop trying. Good afternoon and thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Devi. Thank you, Xiao.
Thank you. Thank you.
See you soon.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everybody.